Verse 169. The giving names to all things existent has always been going on for hundreds of generations past. This has been repeated, is being repeated constantly. An endless mutual discrimination is thus taking place. We give names to things. We're doing this all the time. And we can take this expression of it going on for hundreds of generations past, literally, historically. But there's something being constantly generated. It's something that we are constantly generating, and that is a particular understanding, a particular mode of reality. It's that mode of reality which says that there is something out there. This is consciousness at work. We can see this quite clearly in our dreams. Consciousness is doing it there as well. It's creating things, it's identifying things as out there. There's my friend. There's the Eiffel Tower. There are some Martians. A reality is created. When we wake up, we can quite clearly see that it wasn't out there. And we've got another reality where we're identifying things as out there. And we say, but this one's true. Whatever reality we happen to be experiencing at any particular moment, this mode of discrimination, this giving names to all things existent, is going on all the time. That, at that particular moment, is our reality. It says all things existent. I think a better word would be all things apparent. The giving names to all things apparent. Because they don't exist. They only exist in the naming. And why does this happen? Well, the next verse tells us. Verse 170. If this designating does not take place, the whole world falls into confusion. Thus names are established in order to get rid of confusion. This is how consciousness plays itself out in front of itself. Otherwise, it would just be a stream of chaos. In order for consciousness to present itself to itself, it needs to create patterns. It needs to identify patterns. And this happens in the naming, in discrimination. And verse 169 tells us that it's a mutual discrimination. Not only are we identifying the world out there and all the objects and entities in it, but we are identified, we identify ourselves, or that's done for us. Others discriminate us, but we don't need to worry about others. It's mutual in the sense that it's going on out there, but we also apply it to ourselves. We apply it to ourselves in relation to the discrimination that's going on out there. And then we have the dynamic between the discriminated me and the discriminated world. This is the triple world. This discrimination is looked at in detail in the next verse, verse 171. Things existent are discriminated by the ignorant in the threefold form of discrimination. There is delusion from discriminating names, from conditional origination, and from the notion of being born. Now the purpose of this verse, by examining the discriminating process, is to bring us back to reality once again. And we do this by following the process of discrimination back to its root. So it's a three-step process. First of all, we notice that we're doing this naming, this identifying, this discrimination. And why are we doing this? I gave a conceptual answer earlier on in terms of consciousness presenting itself to itself, but there's actually a strong emotional drive to this. And this is indicated by conditional origination, which at its heart is about grasping and clinging. We're hanging on to something. We are focusing on something and hanging on to that as reality. It's a very deep tendency, a very deep urge. We want to know what things are. We are focusing out there. Our attention is going right out there. And is underpinned by the notion that these things have been born, that these things are entities that have come into existence. Deep down is the conviction that they are real, separate things. And that's why the attention should be out there, focusing on these things, because they have the validity given to them by the belief that they are real, that that is reality. So we name things because of this deep urge to do so, which is based on the belief that they are real, they are substantial. This is the threefold discrimination. Verse 172 tells us that the philosophers argue that the primary elements are unborn and, like the sky, are imperishable, but in reality there are no individual self-substances, and the notion itself belongs to discrimination. So the philosophers or the physicists would tell us that there's a fundamental reality out there on which everything else is built. It might be atoms, it might be what the Buddhist philosophers would call the dharmas, or it might be what more modern physicists might call strings or superstrings or membranes, who knows. There's always something which is supposed to be more real. And curiously, what the physicists are finding that as they look into things more fundamentally to find what is more real, it becomes more and more abstract. But it's just a notion that there is something out there that is real. It's consciousness at play. There are no individual self-substances, just as all the objects, all the entities in a dream are dependent on the consciousness of the dreamer, or simply consciousness. It's exactly the same with this reality. Reality only is because we're conscious of it. The very idea that there is something out there is the process of discrimination at work, telling us that there are things out there that have come into existence. They only have an apparent notional reality by virtue of the fact that there is awareness of them. So this awareness is what gives everything its reality. And we have the option of acknowledging this awareness, of coming back to it, of regarding it as the prime reality. We can rest in it and once again get things back into true perspective.